she asked. Yes, Elias said. And he's still looking for you. Teresa's chest shook. She didn't know what hurt more, the years she spent alone, or the what-ifs that could have changed her life. Will you meet him? Elias asked gently. Teresa stayed silent, then shook her head. Not yet. In the days that followed, Teresa couldn't stop thinking about the name Ramon. Memories flooded back, faint images, a deep voice calling her name, a kiss on the forehead, a hug never felt again, each one now heavier than before. But with the past unveiled, her present began to take shape. Together with Elias, she joined a local cooperative. He taught her how to log inventory, read financial statements, and understand the value of not just products, but her own abilities. You know, I'm not just helping you because I want you to learn, Elias said one afternoon as he explained market pricing to Teresa. I want you to feel that you are enough, even without your father's last name. Even without the Valderramas. Teresa looked at him. Even without Elias, she said teasingly, a small smile on her lips. Elias smiled back but didn't answer right away. Even without me, he finally said, but I hope I'm still here. At a coffee shop in Austin, Texas, Ramon Bautista met with his private investigator. The man handed him a photograph, blurry, taken from a community seminar. The woman in the picture had short hair, looked thinner, but Ramon knew. That's her, he whispered. No matter how much she's changed, I know my daughter. What do you want to do, sir? The man asked. Don't approach her yet, Ramon said. She's not ready, but make sure she's safe. He looked up at the sky, tears in his eyes. I'm sorry, my child. I'm too late. Back in Boulder, Teresa touched the old photo of her younger self and smiled. I don't know what's coming next, she told Elias, but I know who I am now. More than just a wife, more than a donor, more than someone who takes pain in silence. Elias nodded. You're enough. You're whole, and you're free. One morning, Elias handed her a brown envelope. What's this? Teresa asked. Business registration forms, Elias replied. If you want to start something of your own. She looked at him, then at the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the Sam who was broken and silent. She was Teresa, capable of building her own world. She picked up the pen and, for the first time in her life, signed with her own name. The business was called Teresa's Essentials, a small operation selling local farm products from the mountains of Colorado, organic herbs, honey, ginger tea, and handmade soaps. A humble beginning. But each product carried a part of her heart, a heart no longer given away for others, but finally for herself. You can open your own bank account now, Elias said as he helped her with paperwork. This is my first time, Teresa laughed nervously. I've had accounts before, but never really mine. My name was there, but they weren't mine. Now everything is, Elias said. No more Valderramas, no proxy names, just you. Teresa looked at him. He was wearing a polo shirt, holding a laptop, helping build the business of a woman he never abandoned. Why are you doing all this? She asked. You're not obligated. Elias was quiet, then smiled. Because I know what it feels like to lose yourself. And you're the reminder that we can get back up. In the weeks that followed, it wasn't easy. Some days, Teresa doubted herself. Some days, deliveries got mixed up. Some partner farms broke promises. Sometimes she lost money. But she didn't give up. She enrolled in online business courses using Elias's laptop. She learned spreadsheets, accounting reports, marketing plans. Late into the night, she stayed up studying cost of goods and profit margins. I feel like a student catching up, she once joked to Elias. But you're catching up faster than anyone, he replied. One evening, beneath the pine trees, Teresa held a notebook filled with plans. Sometimes I wonder, she said, what if I had never married Miguel? What if I'd been found earlier, grown up wealthy? You might have been different, Elias said. Stronger, she asked. No, Elias said, shaking his head. Maybe weaker. Teresa looked at him. Because your strength now came from all you endured. Not from money, not from a last name, but from the courage to stand up every time you were knocked down. Teresa smiled. Then I won't regret the life I lived. 3 months after launching, Teresa's Essentials had become a known supplier to local eco-friendly shops in the area. She had saved enough to start proper packaging and branding. She commissioned a new logo, a flower with open petals. The tagline, care for self, strength for others. Online orders picked up. Her social media gained followers. She didn't reveal her full past, but she began sharing her inspiration, a woman who had been through darkness and bloomed again. One evening, as Teresa was organizing inventory, Elias approached with a surprise. "I've got something for you," he said, holding a folder. Teresa opened it. Inside was a partnership agreement from a well-known wellness brand in the city. They wanted Teresa's Essentials as their exclusive organic supplier. "Is this real?" she asked in disbelief. Elias nodded. "That's not all. They want you to be a co-investor, not just a supplier, an actual partner." Teresa sat down. She couldn't believe it. "They want to partner with me." "Not just because of your products," Elias said, "but because they saw your vision, your leadership, and your heart." Tears welled up in Teresa's eyes, not from pain, but from a kind of affirmation she'd never known. "I matter. Not because of who I was married to, not because of a connection, but because of who I am." Weeks later, Teresa received an invitation to a wellness expo in New York City, where the joint brand would be launched. She stood before the mirror, wearing a black blazer and an emerald green dress, makeup clean and simple, confident, steady in her gaze. She was no longer the crying woman in the guest bedroom, no longer the maid in the ballroom. She was a woman who had learned to fight, and now she was returning, not as Miguel's wife, but as herself. Inside the limousine taking her to the event, Teresa opened a small box Elias had given her. Inside was a simple silver chain bracelet. At the center, it was engraved, "I was never lost. I was just finding myself." Teresa smiled. "I'm ready." As she stepped out onto the venue's red carpet, all eyes turned to her. Cameras flashed, whispers began. She walked tall, no shame, no fear. The woman they thought was dead was very much alive and ready to collect. Inside the grand ballroom of Lucen Tower, a private event celebrated the launch of a new wellness product line, a joint venture between Aurora Medica and Teresa's Essentials. Investors, media, and industry personalities filled the room. 2 years later, at a luxury hotel in Manhattan, the event for Aurora Medica, a new private medical tech company, began. It was hailed as one of the most anticipated investment ventures in Southeast Asia, known for futuristic diagnostics and advanced stem cell therapy. As applause filled the room, the host announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the co-founder of Aurora Medica and the visionary behind Teresa's Essentials, Miss Teresa Cruz." The doors opened. From the light, Teresa walked in, wearing a sleek black pantsuit, hair in a clean bun, no lipstick. Her face held not arrogance, but self-recognition. "This is me, alive, free, owing nothing to those who hurt me." She stood in the center of the crowd. She hadn't expected to see them, but there they were, Miguel, Elvira. 2 days before the event, in a boardroom high above the city, Teresa sat in a meeting with Aurora Medica executives. "If you come in as a silent investor," one explained, "you'll have a 20% stake, but with your branding power, we're open to making you a co-founder." Teresa didn't respond immediately. She stared at the documents before her. Months ago, she wasn't even allowed inside her own home. Now, she was being offered a founding seat. "I won't be silent," she said. "If I join, you'll hear my voice." The executive smiled. "That's exactly what we're looking for." Meanwhile, back at the Valderrama mansion, Elvira was livid. She stormed through the living room, tablet in hand, fuming. "Miguel, what is this I'm hearing? Teresa's alive." She slammed the tablet on the table. On the screen, a poster for the launch event. "I thought she was dead. We had a death certificate." Miguel couldn't meet her eyes. "I didn't know, Mom. I thought we all thought it was real." "No guessing," Elvira barked. "If she's alive, then she knows." She knows we used her. She knows about the blood transfusions. And now she's coming back with her own business. Elvira looked at Andrea in the corner. Make sure she doesn't destroy our family's reputation. At Teresa's hotel the night before the event, she sat on the balcony looking out at the city lights. Elias sat beside her, sipping coffee. You ready for tomorrow? He asked. I don't know if I should be scared or excited, Teresa replied. After everything, I'm going back to the city not to beg, but to show that I survived. Elias smiled. Not just that you survived, but that you're whole. There's still a part of me that's scared, she whispered. What if I have to face them again? Miguel, Elvira, what if they try to do it again? It's different now, Elias answered. You're not alone anymore. The day of the launch arrived. Inside the venue, the red carpet, media walls, and reporters buzzed with anticipation. This wasn't the kind of event where one would expect to see a woman who was once forced to wear a maid's uniform just to be humiliated. But as the co-founders and partners were introduced, whispers began. Is that Teresa Cruz? She looks like Sam Valderrama. No way. Sam's dead, right? But look at her eyes. That posture, it's her. When Teresa took the stage, there was no hesitation in her voice. Good evening. Thank you for welcoming a woman who was once told she would never amount to anything. She looked directly into the crowd. In one corner sat Miguel, Elvira, and Andrea, present as business representatives of Valderrama Industries. They hadn't been invited. Their PR team had volunteered to attend so they could observe the competition, but they hadn't expected this. My name is Teresa Cruz, she continued, and I'm not here to explain who I used to be. I'm here to show who I am now. After her speech, Teresa walked down the hallway toward a private lounge. All eyes followed her. Suddenly, someone stepped in her path. Miguel. Sam, he said softly. Teresa didn't speak. She just stared at him. I was shocked. I thought you were gone. You had a lot of thoughts, Miguel, she said coldly. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's to stop trusting the thoughts of people who don't know how to love. Can we talk? He asked. There are things I need to explain. She smiled, calm and composed. I don't need an explanation from someone who stood in silence while I was humiliated in front of a crowd. She turned her head. Elvira stood nearby, wineglass in hand, her neck stiff with tension. Teresa ignored her. She walked straight into the lounge, chin held high. No rage, only dignity. That evening, in a closed-door investor meeting, one executive spoke up. Miss Cruz, we've seen the potential of your brand. We're offering to acquire your brand, double its valuation, but with one condition. What condition? Teresa asked. You give up control of the name. It will be exclusive to the Valderrama Wellness Group. Teresa laughed, not sarcastically, not bitterly, but with pure truth. Do you know why I started this business? She asked. Because I didn't want to repeat history. She stood. I'm sorry. I can't sell it, especially not to the very people who once proved I could be trampled. She looked them all in the eye. I am not for sale. After the event, Teresa walked quietly back to her hotel through light rain. Elias opened an umbrella and walked beside her. Let's go home, he said. Teresa smiled. Her shoulders were wet, but her spine stood straight. Not yet. There's one more thing I have to do. What's the plan? It's time to return everything they gave me, she said. But I don't need to scream to be heard. My revenge, she added, comes with dignity. In the stillness of an old garden on the estate of Don Ramon, the twilight sun filtered through the leaves. The scent of gumamila and evening jasmine lingered in the air. Sometimes silence isn't just the absence of sound. It's the culmination of a long-awaited moment. Teresa stood there in a simple white dress. She quietly faced the elderly man in front of her. Ramon, the man who had searched for her without her knowing. Now that they were face to face, everything that had been missing returned. the hole in her heart suddenly named. Is it really you? Ramon asked, voice trembling with hope, holding an old photo of a baby girl, a girl with gentle eyes and a sharp nose. Teresa nodded, her lips quivering. Yes, I'm Teresa. Ramon's world stopped. Tears fell from his eyes, tears that had been withheld for too long. He stepped closer cautiously, as if afraid it was all a dream. My daughter, he whispered, my child. Teresa could no longer hold back. She walked forward and embraced him tightly, from the heart of a daughter starving for a father's love and from a father who had long regretted the years without his child. If only you knew how long I've searched for you, Teresa, Ramon said, voice shaking. I lived for years in sorrow, longing. What matters, Teresa replied, her voice thick with emotion, is that we still found each other. Ramon took a deep breath and pulled an envelope from his coat. All my properties, my businesses, my land, my shares in different companies, I'm transferring them to you. Not because I owe it to you as a father, but because you deserve it. Teresa's eyes widened. I don't need, Ramon gently stopped her. This isn't about money. It's about responsibility. I want to trust you. You will carry our name forward, not just as Teresa, but as a woman with principle. The air around them stilled. Only the wind and birds bore witness to the moment between father and daughter. Ramon took her hand and placed the envelope in it. I know what's been happening, he said. I know what you've endured. That's why I believe this will be the key. He paused. To take Valderrama Industries back. You don't have to prove anything anymore, Teresa, he said. But if you want to claim your rightful place in a world that once turned its back on you, I'll be here with you. Tears fell again, but this time not from pain, from acceptance, from new hope. For the first time, she felt fully embraced as a daughter, as a woman, as a person. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they looked up together at the sky, father and daughter, reunited by fate, ready to begin a new chapter, not one of revenge alone, but of legacy, forgiveness, and love. Soon after, a press release was issued by Aurora Medica. Aurora Medica confirms full acquisition of Vitalis Pharmarmac, effective immediately. CEO Teresa Cruz assures continuation of services and expansion of public health programs. Few in the industry noticed the name Vitalis Pharmarmac, except those who knew its significance. At Valderrama Industries, a panicked executive rushed into Elvira's office, tablet in hand. Ma'am Elvira, he gasped, Vitalis Pharmarmac has just been acquired, fully bought out by Aurora Medica. Elvira turned sharply, wine glass in hand. So, ma'am, the executive continued, Vitalis is our third-party supplier for blood storage and plasma tech in all hospital branches. If we lose that partnership, our entire medical operations will shut down. Andrea had just walked in. She looked alarmed. Elvira remained quiet. Then she picked up the tablet and read the headline, Teresa Cruz, Aurora Medica. She didn't need an explanation. This wasn't coincidence. This was a calculated move, a strike at the very root of their most profitable business. A few weeks earlier, I want to acquire Vitalis, Teresa had said in a meeting with the Aurora board, not for profit, but for control of the supply chain that Valderrama relies on. A partner nodded. It'll be expensive, but if we treat it as a strategic acquisition, it's feasible. Then start the negotiations quietly, Teresa replied. I want it completed by the end of the quarter. For what purpose? Asked the legal advisor. Teresa answered without hesitation. For people like me, she said, those who were used, discarded. They don't get to do this to anyone else. Back at Valderrama headquarters, an emergency board meeting was underway. Investor confidence was crumbling. We're having logistical issues, the CFO reported. Region 4's orders were cancelled. We've lost blood preservation materials. Find another supplier, Elvira ordered. Ma'am, the executive replied, Teresa owns the exclusive licensing rights to that tech. She's removed us from the partner list. Miguel sat in the corner, silent. No one was listening to him anymore. He was now a ghost in his own company. We can't let her bring us down, Andrea said, voice trembling. It's not just her, Elvira muttered. I was raised to win. And the Valderrama legacy won't end with that woman. But it didn't stop there. 2 weeks after the acquisition, a bigger headline shook the industry. Valderrama Industries under investigation for ethical malpractice involving unauthorized blood donations from spouse-relative source. Whistleblower remains anonymous but credible. More headlines followed. Wife used as blood donor. Medical ethics breached. Valderrama faces court cases. Exclusive interview, former staff speaks out. A former nurse appeared on television. They used Mrs. Valderrama as a donor. But the records were always manipulated. Some documents are missing, but there's still data in the system. The whistleblower's identity was hidden, but the evidence was enough. At the Aurora Medica headquarters, Elias approached Teresa with fresh reports. "You didn't leak this?" he asked. "No," Teresa answered. "But I won't stop the truth from coming out, especially if the truth is what will finally close these wounds." Elias shook his head, smiling slightly. "You're so quiet, but every move you make screams justice." "The sea is quiet when it's deep," Teresa replied. "I don't want to destroy, but if something must be broken, I'll break it the right way." 2 weeks after the scandal broke, Teresa sat quietly in her office with Ramon. They looked at each other, no dramatics, no fanfare. "I'm sorry I was late," Ramon said. "But I'm proud of you." Teresa's eyes softened. "I spent years asking why no one ever chose me," she said. "Now I know I had to choose myself." Ramon pulled her in for a hug, not as a savior, but as a parent ready to catch up. "If you'll allow it," he said, "I'd like to support you. But if you don't want that, I'll accept it, too. Just know this, you're no longer alone." Teresa smiled, tears in her eyes, but her heart light. Meanwhile, at the Valderrama mansion, an eviction notice arrived. They could no longer pay mounting debts. Joint accounts were frozen. Business partners had withdrawn. Their hold on the market gone. "Why is this happening?" Andrea screamed. Miguel remained quiet, but for the first time, he spoke. "She's not doing this to hurt us," he said. "She's doing this to make things right." "You always side with her," Elvira snapped. "This is your fault. You married her. You manipulated her." "Don't blame me, Mom," Miguel said quietly. "She's the only one who loved me when I had nothing. And what did we do to her?" He walked away, leaving mother and sister behind in a crumbling empire. That night in the rain, Teresa stood across the street from the old Valderrama house. The lights were off, no guards, no noise. A once imposing place of power, now hollow. Elias stood beside her. "How does it feel?" he asked. "A little heavy," she said, "but peaceful." "You don't have to look back anymore," Elias said. "You owe them nothing." She nodded. "You're right. Justice," Teresa thought, "doesn't always scream. Sometimes it's the silence that speaks louder." In her office later that night, Teresa received a media request. "We would like you to speak publicly, Miss Cruz, about what happened, about why you disappeared. The world is listening now." She smiled. "If I speak, then everything must be told." At the TV studio the next day, Teresa sat in the makeup chair, preparing for the taping of her primetime interview. It would air on Behind the Scenes, an investigative program known for exposing controversial truths. Elias waited silently in the guest lounge. He knew this was the moment that could bring back Teresa's deepest pain, but also the moment that would finally set her free. Before the interview began, a well-known journalist entered Teresa's office. He wasn't just any reporter, he was once Miguel's classmate, now a senior field researcher for the show. "Miss Cruz," he said, "we know parts of your story. But I believe the country deserves the whole truth." Teresa looked at him. "If I speak, people will be hurt. Secrets will never be taken back." "Maybe," he replied, "but I'm sure of one thing, you're the voice we need to hear." Inside the studio, the cameras were set. Teresa wore a plain white blouse, beige slacks, no jewelry, no red lipstick. She presented herself not as a glamorous entrepreneur, but as a woman who had lived through destruction and survived. "Are you ready?" the host asked. Teresa nodded. This wasn't for drama. This was for truth. "Who are you really, Teresa Cruz?" She paused, took a deep breath. "I'm a woman who loved her husband even though he didn't love me back. I'm a woman who was used for her blood but was never treated as equal. I'm a woman who endured humiliation and still chose to love." The lights in the studio dimmed slightly, and the camera light blinked red. Live recording had begun. Teresa looked directly into the lens, calm, composed, but inside her chest, a storm churned. The host leaned in slightly. "What happened to you after your marriage?" Teresa didn't hesitate. "I was used. My marriage was part of a plan I didn't know about. I became a donor of blood, of strength, of dignity. I lived in a house where I was never seen as a person." She paused. "But I stayed because I loved. I gave. And because I believed I was chosen for something more." The audience in the studio remained still. The energy shifted. This wasn't a confession. It was a reckoning. "Why didn't you speak up earlier?" the host asked gently. "Because I was ashamed," Teresa answered. "Because when you've been made to feel worthless, it takes time to realize your value. And now I know who I am." The camera zoomed slightly closer. The host asked the next question carefully. "Is it true you faked your death?" "Yes." Gasps echoed in the control room. "I did it to survive and because I needed to become someone no one could break again." Back at the Valderrama mansion, what remained of it, Elvira sat frozen, watching the television. Miguel stood behind her. Andrea was in the corner, her lips trembling. They watched the woman they'd buried alive, unapologetic, and unstoppable. The host leaned forward. "What would you say to the people who hurt you?" Teresa looked straight into the lens. "I forgive you, but I will never return. I will never be yours again, not as a wife, not as a daughter-in-law, not as a pawn. I am Teresa Cruz, and I belong to no one." In homes across the country, viewers wept, some out of guilt, some out of pride, some because they saw themselves in her story, and some because they knew they had underestimated her. That night, after the interview aired, social media exploded. "Teresa Cruz, voice of strength. Justice for Teresa." Thousands of women sent messages. "I left because of you. I finally stood up to him. You reminded me I am not weak." And in the quiet of her hotel room, Teresa read them one by one. Elias entered, holding 2 mugs of hot cocoa. "You changed lives tonight," he said. "I didn't mean to," she replied. But sometimes survival becomes a message. A week later, Teresa was invited to speak at a women's summit in Washington, D.C. She stepped onto the stage with no cards, no speech, only memory, only truth. "There are women everywhere living in silence," she said. "Married but unloved, present but invisible, giving everything and still not enough. I am one of them, but I rose." Across the country, an elderly housemaid named Martha watched from a nursing home. She wiped her eyes with a tissue and whispered, "That girl, she spoke for all of us." And at a modest graveyard in a quiet town, Teresa returned once more. She placed flowers on the stone of the grandfather who raised her. "I know you were afraid, but I understand now," she said softly. "Even fear can come from love." She kissed the headstone, stood up, and walked away. The sun warmed her shoulders. The wind no longer felt harsh. Teresa Cruz had come full circle, not broken, not bitter, but free. 1 month later, at the newly built community center funded by Aurora Medica, children laughed as they ran through the garden paths. A wall near the lobby bore a plaque in honor of every woman who stood up, even when her knees shook. Teresa Cruz. Inside the center, Teresa stood before a group of young women. Some had survived abuse. Some were rebuilding their lives. All of them were listening. She spoke not as a CEO, but as someone who had once begged for love and now had found peace within herself. "I thought I needed to be chosen," she said. "But I realized I only needed to choose me." At the back of the room, Elias watched. He had never confessed his feelings in grand declarations. He had simply stayed, listened, protected, walked beside her. After the talk ended, Teresa approached him. "I think I'm ready," she said. "For what?" Elias asked. She smiled. "To start again. Not to forget, not to erase, but to begin on my own terms." He handed her a folder. Inside, adoption papers for a little girl named Hope. She was abandoned at a clinic last year. "She reminds me of you," Elias said. Teresa's hands trembled slightly as she held the papers. "I'd been given so much. Maybe it's time I pass it on." That afternoon, Teresa visited her father, Ramon, at his home. "I'm proud of you," he said as she helped him into his wheelchair. "Thank you for finding me," she replied. "Even if it was late." "Love never expires," he said. "It just waits." They looked out over the orchard where workers were planting trees, part of a new livelihood program Teresa had started for women and farmers. Later that night, Teresa returned home to her quiet mountain cottage. She stepped onto the veranda, coffee in hand. A little girl played nearby, giggling. Elias sat beside her, sketching a plan for their next outreach project. Peace had finally arrived. But more than that, purpose. She opened her notebook and wrote, "I was not saved by anyone else. I saved myself." And that is the story I will pass on. Far away, in the now empty Valderrama mansion, the rooms echoed with silence. No footsteps, no servants, no power. Just history faded and a legacy rewritten by the woman they thought would remain voiceless in a new world of her own making. With no applause, no stage, no spotlight, Teresa Cruz smiled and began again.